July 21st, 1944. The Asan Adelup Invasion Beach, Guam. Amid the thunder of naval bombardment and the metallic shriek of landing craft grinding onto coral, the Americans expected resistance. They expected machine gun fire and mortar shells. They expected barbarism. They found a ghost. He emerged not from a pillbox, but from the jungle's green maw. A specter in the smoke-filled air. A man. Impossibly thin, his skin burned the color of mahogany in the tattered fatigues of a Navy radio man. He walked toward the chaos, raising a hand not in surrender, but greeting. He saluted the first shocked Marine he met. His name was Radio Man First Class George Ray Tweed. He was presumed dead. For 31 months, he was the only American serviceman on the island to evade capture by the Japanese. He did not do it alone. For 956 days, he was a whisper, a phantom, a story told by mothers to frighten children into obedience. Be quiet, or the Kempe-tai will hear you. Be still, or they will think you are hiding, Tweedo. The feared Takutai, Japan's naval intelligence, had a file on him. The folder was codenamed Yurei. Ghost. Their hunt was a clinical, brutal obsession that seeped into every village on the island. The official notices were nailed to church walls in Hagutnya and posts in every square. 10,000 yen for his capture. A king's ransom. The unspoken part was the penalty for hiding him. The penalty was death. A slow, agonizing death. They were not empty threats. The Kempe-tai had their methods. Rumors spread like jungle rot. Rumors of the water cure, of bamboo splinters driven deep under fingernails, of public beatings meant to break not just bones, but the will of an entire people. The garrison commander's daily report had a standing order. Find the American. Find who gives him shelter. An order repeated every day for 956 days. But nobody talked. Not one word. For 31 months, a conspiracy of silence, absolute and unbroken, held the island in its grip. A conspiracy of profound defiance. It was not a formal organization with leaders and codes. It was a silent, intuitive network of ordinary Chamorro islanders, a web of immense, unspoken courage woven from the delicate threads of shared danger. It stretched from the limestone cliffs of the north to the volcanic soil of the south, from the dense jungles near Talofofo to the quiet lanes of Barrigada. A network of people whose names would never appear in military dispatches. Farmers like the stoic Antonio Artero, who dug a shelter beneath his chicken coop, the entrance concealed by filth. Teachers like Agueda Johnston, who used her position to pass messages. Priests like Father Jesus Baza Duenas, who offered salvation from the pulpit while practicing sedition in the confession booth, protecting the American as an unwavering article of faith. They moved him under moonless skies. They fed him from their own pitiful rations. They lied for him, they prayed for him, and some died for him. The central mystery is not how Tweed survived. The mystery is why they did it. Why would a community risk annihilation for one man, a stranger? The official U.S. Navy histories call it pro-American loyalty, a footnote in the Mariana Islands campaign. The islanders are called friendly natives. Their sacrifice a quaint detail. But the truth is far more complex and far more harrowing. This is a story of a people's rebellion against an occupier bent on erasing their identity. Hiding George Tweed became more than compassion. It became the ultimate symbol of resistance. A secret war fought not with guns, but with silence. A war fought with food. A war fought with lies. The full story was never written down. The official reports from the naval government of Guam list the names of Chamorros executed by the Japanese. A report dated October 1945 is a cold, bureaucratic ledger of tragedy. It states names, dates, causes of death. Beheaded for aiding American. It does not state what that aid entailed. It does not speak of the midnight journeys, the hidden food, the children taught to be silent. Those details were buried. Buried with the dead in unmarked graves in a place called Fena. buried in the trauma of survivors who for decades refused to speak of the beatings, the interrogations, the neighbors they saw dragged away. This investigation, piecing together long-forgotten oral histories, declassified memos, and the private diaries of the Japanese officers who hunted them, uncovers the staggering story behind those names. It reveals the true cost of hiding a ghost and the remarkable, terrifying bravery of the ordinary islanders who risked everything to keep one flicker of hope alive in the darkest days of the war. December 10th, 1941. Hagotnya, Guam. The sun rose on a world that no longer belonged to them. It was a different sun, a Japanese sun. The American flag, the one that flew over the Plaza de España, was gone. Just gone. In its place, the rising sun. Red circle on a white field. Simple. Absolute. A man named Captain Hayashi commanded the occupation force. The Minsei, the Civil Administration Department, made the new rules. The rules were simple, too. Obey, bow, work. Guam had a new name. Omiyajima, the Great Shrine Island. A shrine to a new emperor, a distant god-king they were told to worship. The Chamorro people, the children of the island, were now subjects. Less than subjects, they were property. Property of the Imperial Japanese Army. It started with bowing. You had to bow to every soldier, every single one. A deep bow from the waist, not a nod, a sign of submission, of respect. Senpai. Respect. They said the word over and over, senpai. But it was not about respect. It was about power. It was about fear. A boy, maybe 15, forgot to bow to a passing patrol in Agana Heights. They said his name was Juan. Juan Cruz. The slap echoed in the quiet street. Then the butt of a rifle. He lay on the ground, bleeding from his mouth. Nobody moved to help him, not right away. They learned quickly. Bow. Always bow. And then the main thing started. Forced labor. The Japanese called it kinro hoshi. Service. It was not service. It was slavery. The orders came down from the gunsei kanbu, all able-bodied persons. Men, women, and children over the age of 12. All of them. Report for work, no pay, just work. From sunrise to sunset, 6 days a week, sometimes 7. They built things. Things for the war. The Tian airfield, they called it Tai. They flattened the land, by hand. With shovels they made themselves, with baskets woven from palm fronds. They carried dirt, they carried coral. Sharp coral that cut their hands, their bare feet. The sun beat down, no shade. The guards watched, their bayonets gleaming. They watched for laziness, for defiance. A moment's rest could earn a beating. A word of complaint could earn much worse. So much work, so much building. They built tank traps along the beaches at Tumen and Talifofo, digging deep pits in the sand and lining them with sharpened bamboo stakes. They built pillboxes, bunkers, gun emplacements. Concrete and steel mixed and poured by hand. For the emperor, for the war, for the defense of Omiyajima. The island was being turned into a fortress. A fortress built with Chamorro sweat and Chamorro blood. The document was labeled Post-War Testimony, File G7. A woman, Maria Reyes, age 54 at the time of the interview. Her voice, transcribed onto thin paper, was quiet, brittle. They took my husband, my 2 sons, to work on the Orote airfield. Every day they came back, their bodies were smaller, thinner. Their eyes were hollow. They gave us a ball of rice, so small. Sometimes with a piece of fish, sometimes not. My youngest, Thomas, he was 16. He got sick, the fever. The guards said he was faking. They beat him. He died 2 days later. They just threw his body on a cart. A ball of rice. For 12 hours of breaking rocks, a ball of rice. That's what a life was worth. Paranoia became the air they breathed. The Keibutai, the naval police, were everywhere. They wore white uniforms. They had no mercy. They looked for spies, for traitors, for anyone helping the Americans. and there was someone to help. One American, a radio man named George Tweed who had escaped capture. He was hiding somewhere on the island. A ghost. A rumor. The hunt for Tweed turned the island into a prison of whispers. Did you give him food? Did you see where he went? Do you know who is helping him? The Kebitai asked the questions. They did not ask nicely. They took people to interrogation centers, in Marizo, in Yigo, places people spoke of with a shudder. Places people went into, but did not always come out of. A priest, Father Jesus Bazaduenas, a respected man, a man of God. They suspected him of knowing about Tweed, of helping him. On July 8, 1944, the Kebitai took him. They took his nephew, Eduardo Duenas. They took them to a place called Tai. They questioned them for 4 days. The official report said they were executed for treason. It did not say how, but the whispers knew. The whispers told of water cure, of beatings with clubs and leather straps, of fingernails pulled out with pliers. The whispers painted pictures the official reports left blank. Schneider, Becker, Wagner, Kaufmann, Kleine, Gross. The names of German torturers in another war, an ocean away. Here the names were different. Watanabe, Tanaka, Sato. But the methods were the same. The pain was the same. 6 million. That's a number from a different horror story. On Guam, the numbers were smaller. 35,000 souls trapped on an island. 35,000. Each one a universe of fear. The women suffered a unique terror. They worked alongside the men, hauling the same rocks, digging the same ditches. But for them, there was another threat, a constant, silent one that walked in the boots of the soldiers. The glances, the late-night visits, the girls hidden away by their mothers, their hair cut short, their faces smeared with dirt to make them look like boys. It was a desperate, hopeless game. A folder in the archives simply titled Crimes Against Women contains hundreds of pages. Most of them are sealed, even now. As the months turned into years, the hope began to drain away. 1942, 1943. The American planes were just stories. The rations grew smaller, the beatings grew more frequent. The island was starving. The people ate fadang, a type of cycad nut. It was poisonous. It had to be soaked for days. The water changed again and again to leach out the toxins. Get it wrong and you would die. Slowly. Neurological damage. Paralysis. Get it right, and you had something to fill your stomach. For a little while, that was the choice. Then, in the early summer of 1944, everything changed again. The American planes were no longer stories. They were real. They were silver specks in the sky, growing larger, louder. B-29s. They flew high over the island on their way to Japan. Untouchable. A promise. And a curse. The Japanese command knew what the planes meant. The Americans were coming back. The fortress built by the Chamorros would be put to the test. And the Chamorros themselves? They were a liability. A fifth column. 35,000 potential spies. The order came in late June. An order for relocation. All Chamorros were to be marched from their homes. Marched inland, to concentration camps hidden in the dense jungle valleys. Menengon, Talafofo, Yigo. They were told it was for their safety, to protect them from the coming American bombardment. Nobody believed that, not for a second. They gathered what they could carry, a few clothes, a pot, a little fadong. They looked at their homes, their land, the land their families had lived on for generations. And then they were forced to turn their backs on it. The long walk began. Down dusty roads past the fields they were no longer allowed to farm, under the gaze of guards with rifles. And for thousands it would be the start of the final, most terrible chapter of the occupation. It was not a march for safety, it was a death march. In slow motion. June 2nd, 1942. San Diego, California. A letter arrived. a standard form, the kind the Navy sends when a man is gone, missing in action, presumed dead. The words were cold, official. For the family of Radio Man First Class George Ray Tweed, the world had ended 6 months earlier. On Guam. The man was gone. A memory, a ghost. But on Guam, the ghost was a problem. A real problem. The Japanese garrison, the Keibutai, had counted the American bodies after the invasion. 6. 5 sailors, 1 Marine. The numbers were neat. The report was filed. The island was secure. But the whispers started. In the villages, in the markets, a shadow in the northern jungles. An American, alive. The Japanese commander dismissed it. Chamorro folklore. Ghost stories to frighten children. He was no ghost. He was 40 years old. A career Navy man, not a jungle fighter. Not a commando. He was a technician. A man of wires and frequencies. George Tweed. When the island fell, he and 5 others had melted into the jungle. 6 men against an army. The others were found, one by one. Alcorn, Jones, Crump, Johnston, Tyson. A list of the dead. Some betrayed, some caught searching for food. Their heads displayed on poles in Hagatnya. A warning. A brutal, effective warning. Only Tweed remained. 31 months. That is 2 years, 7 months. Over 940 days. A man alone, hunted in the dense, suffocating green. The Japanese put a price on his head. 100 yen, then 500, then 1,000. A fortune for a starving islander. Posters went up. His face grainy and unfamiliar. His capture meant food, security. His life was worth a village's comfort. Helping him meant death, not a quick death. A slow, interrogated death for you, for your wife, for your children. And still, they helped. The first was Antonio Artero, a farmer from Yigo. He found Tweed near his ranch, a scarecrow of a man, delirious with fever, bones pushing against his skin. The risk was absolute. A Kaibatai patrol passed his land twice a day. His neighbors had hungry children. Anyone could be an informer. Artero looked at the American. This ghost. He made a choice. That's how it began. It was a conspiracy of decency. A quiet, deadly rebellion fought with scraps of food and whispered information. Artero would bring what he could. A handful of rice wrapped in a banana leaf. A piece of dried fish. A single precious egg. Food he took from his own family's mouths. He never came the same way twice. He would climb sheer limestone cliffs in the dark, a small bundle of life clutched in one hand, his calloused feet finding holds in the rock. A silhouette against the moon, a farmer risking everything for a man he barely knew. For an idea. Tweed was moved, constantly, from a hollowed-out banyan tree to a cramped chicken coop, from a dank cave hidden behind a curtain of vines to a narrow ledge on a cliff face. The Japanese intelligence file on him was supposedly called Hari, the needle. Because finding this one man in the 30-mile-long haystack of Guam was impossible. He was everywhere and nowhere. He was a rumor made flesh. The help spread, a network of whispers. Francisco Quinata, a man from the village of Barrigada, the Pangilinan family, Joaquin Flores, dozens of others, men, women, even children. They became his eyes and ears. They brought him not just food, but news, troop movements, the location of new gun emplacements, the number of ships in Apra Harbor, the morale of the Japanese soldiers. Tweed listened. He remembered. He was a radio man without a radio, a spy without a transmitter, a living repository of enemy secrets. He was no longer just surviving, he was waiting. Then, in the summer of 1944, the sky changed. The distant drone grew. American planes, first reconnaissance flights. Then, bombers. They were coming back. Hope was a dangerous thing. It could make a man careless, but for Tweed, it was a signal. He needed to talk to them. He needed a voice. He found a piece of a shattered mirror, a shard of a truck headlamp. He polished it on his shirt. He practiced. From his hiding spot on the cliff, he had a clear view of the sea. He learned the American patrol routes. The time of day the sun was at the perfect angle. He waited. A destroyer appeared on the horizon. He began to flash. A desperate, silent scream for help across miles of water. One flash, two. A pause, a frantic pulse of light. SOS, then more. GT. My name is George Tweed. Day after day, nothing. The ship would continue on its course. The planes flew overhead, blind to the one man on the ground. Doubt began to fester. A man can survive the jungle, he can survive the enemy. But surviving hopelessness is the hardest war of all. On July 10, 1944, the destroyer USS McCall was on its patrol route. The lookout, bored, scanned the coastline. He saw something. A flicker. On a cliff face near the northern tip of the island. He almost ignored it. A trick of the light. Sun glinting off a wet rock. A piece of glass. But it came again. Regular, insistent. A pattern. He called the bridge. The captain was skeptical. A trap? A ghost? The signal was weak, but it was unmistakable, and it was Morse code. The ship began to turn. September 7th, 1942. Manangon, Guam. It was a secret everyone knew, but no one spoke. A secret whispered on the wind, passed in a glance between women at the well, hidden in a folded banana leaf with a piece of fish. A dangerous secret. A secret that could get you killed. One American, radio man first class George Tweed. He had not surrendered, and the entire island, it seemed, was conspiring to keep him alive. The resistance was not a formal army. It had no uniform, no headquarters, no battle plan written on a map. Its soldiers were farmers, fishermen, mothers, children. Its headquarters was the jungle. Its battlefield was the human heart. The fight was silent. It was a war of whispers. It wasn't one person. It was a network, a conspiracy of kindness. The Pangolinans, the Cruzes, the Charforises, the Borjas. Names on a list the Japanese would have killed for. They moved the American from cave to cave, from one family's ranch to another, always one step ahead of the search parties. These were not grand gestures, they were small acts of impossible bravery. A woman named Maria, leaving a bundle of taro and shrimp at the base of a breadfruit tree. A 10-year-old boy, Juan, leading a Japanese patrol in the wrong direction, his face a perfect mask of innocence. They were all in it, all of them. The caves were their sanctuaries and their prisons. Dark, dripping holes in the limestone cliffs, alive with centipedes and scorpions. Families huddled in these spaces for days, sometimes weeks, sharing the suffocating air with the man they were protecting. Children learned to be silent. A cough, a cry could mean death. Sickness was rampant. Dengue fever, dysentery, malnutrition. The children's bellies swelled from hunger, their eyes large and haunted in the gloom. To feed Tweed was to starve a child. A simple equation. A brutal choice. They made the choice, over and over again. Then came the trucks, with loudspeakers. The voice, metallic and strange, echoing through the villages. A Japanese officer from the Minsebu, the civil administration, speaking broken Chamorro. America has forgotten you. You are Japanese now. Leaflets fell from the sky like poisoned snow. They showed pictures of American cities in flames. Fakes. But how could they know? The propaganda burrowed deep. It said the Americans, if they ever returned, would not distinguish friend from foe. They would bomb the island. They would kill everyone. Fear became a sickness too. A madness. Some believed the whispers, the lies. They saw the first American planes on reconnaissance flights, tiny silver specks in the vast blue sky, and they remembered the warnings. They saw deliverance as destruction. At Fena, two sisters, convinced the end had come, joined hands and leaped from the cliffs into the reservoir below. A family at Retidian Point did the same, choosing the jagged rocks over a capture that was only in their minds. The Japanese had planted a seed of terror, and it was bearing terrible fruit. The hunt for the American intensified. He was more than a man now. He was a symbol, a ghost of defiance that haunted the Japanese occupation. His existence proved their control was incomplete. The Kempeitai, the dreaded secret police, grew more desperate, more brutal. They offered rewards. Rice, money, safety. No one talked. Then they found a weak link, or thought they did. Manuel Flores Aguan, a farmer from Barrigada, 41 years old. He wasn't a primary helper, not one of the main conspirators. He just provided food sometimes. A little here, a little there. Someone saw him. Someone whispered. That's all it took. The Kempeitai came for him at dawn. They took him to their headquarters in Agana Heights. The interrogation file number 734, later recovered, was thin. Mostly questions, no answers. They asked him about the American. They asked him about the families. They asked him about the caves near his ranch. For days, they asked. The report stated only a single phrase, repeated. Subject remains uncooperative. We know what uncooperative meant. We know what happened in that room. The sounds that carried on the night air. The rumors that spread through Hagotnya like fire. They broke his body, his bones, his teeth, his will to live. But they could not break his silence. He would not speak the name, not the American's name. Not the names of the families who had shared their last cup of rice with him. His silence was his final act of defiance. On October 12, 1943, they took him to the plaza in Hagotnya, a public lesson for everyone to see. They made him kneel, in the same plaza where the American flag had once flown. He was executed, a single shot. Manuel Aguan was dead. A lesson had been delivered. The price of courage had been displayed for all to see. But the hunt was not over. The secret was still out there, hidden in the dark, damp earth of the island. And the Japanese knew. Someone else knew where the American was hiding. Someone else. And they would find them. June 15, 1944. 5 miles off the coast of Saipan. They called it Operation Forager, a name that sounded like a picnic. It was not a picnic. The sea was a parking lot of steel. Gray ships, hundreds of them stretching to the horizon. An armada, the largest ever assembled in the Pacific. On the bridges, admirals chewed cigars and stared through binoculars at the green island ahead. An island that was about to become hell. They had maps. The Office of Naval Intelligence, the Army G2, the planners at SINCPAC headquarters in Pearl Harbor. They had charts, aerial photographs, tide tables, but they did not have the things that mattered, the things you cannot see from 10,000 feet. They did not know about the new 150mm gun emplacement hidden in a cave mouth above Chilan Kanoa. They did not know the Japanese 43rd Division had moved its headquarters 2 miles north, deep into the terrain they called Tapochau. They did not know which trails were mined and which were safe. But someone did. Someone on the island. The intelligence reports were thin. Possible troop concentrations here. Reported coastal defense battery near Garapan? Then a trickle of new information. Smuggled out by submarine. Whispered by the few Chamorros who had escaped to the American fleet. Information on scraps of paper, encoded messages baked into bread, carried by children who knew the jungle better than any Japanese soldier. Names appeared. Agualo, Sablan, Ada, Camacho, Pangilinan. They were the eyes, the ears. The invisible army whose reports were filed under human intelligence uncorroborated. Uncorroborated but priceless. The landings began. 8,000 Marines in 20 minutes. A storm of men and steel hitting the beaches codenamed red, green, blue, and yellow. The Japanese were waiting. Mortars, artillery, machine guns. The water turned red. The sand turned red. For 24 days, the battle for Saipan raged, a meat grinder. It was a fight for every cave, every ridge, every sugarcane field. The Marines called it the last banzai. On July 7th, 3,000 Japanese soldiers, many of them wounded, armed with bayonets on bamboo poles, charged the American lines. A wave of death screaming, Tenno Heika Banzai. It was slaughter. But something else was happening, away from the main fronts. Chamorro and Carolinian guides, men who had been brutalized for 2 years, now led Marine patrols through hidden paths, bypassing Japanese strongpoints. They pointed out snipers' nests. They located freshwater springs. One man, a farmer named Jose Atayo, led a platoon from the 27th Infantry Division around a fortified hill, allowing them to attack from the rear. The after-action report simply stated, civilian guide provided tactical advantage. It did not mention that Jose's family had been executed by the Kempeitai a week earlier. It did not mention the cost. July 21st, 1944. Asen Beach, Guam, 3 years, 31 months, 954 days of waiting, 954 days of whispered prayers. The Navy guns spoke first, a deafening chorus that pulverized the Japanese defenses along the shore. Then the landing craft came. The 3rd Marine Division, the 1st Provisional Marine Brigade, the 77th Infantry Division. They came back. For the men hitting the beaches, it was a battle for a strategic island. For the Chamorros hiding in the jungles, it was the end of the nightmare. The fighting was brutal. Orote Peninsula, Barrigada, Mount Santa Rosa. The Japanese fought to the last man. They knew what losing Guam meant. They knew about the airfields, but the resistance network, the secret everyone knew, was now working in the open. Men and women emerged from the Manengon concentration camp, skeletal but determined. They carried wounded Americans. They led supply columns. A sketch drawn from memory by a 16-year-old girl named Remedios Santos showed the precise location of a command bunker on Fonte Plateau. The bunker was destroyed by a single naval shell from the USS Pennsylvania. One shell. One sketch. The War Department file is thin. Intelligence from local populace proved highly effective. Highly effective. Saipan fell. Tinian fell. Guam was secured. The cost was staggering. Over 55,000 casualties on all sides. American, Japanese, Islander. A butcher's bill for 3 small islands. But the islands themselves were not the prize. The prize was geography. The prize was the flat, coral-topped terrain of Tinian. The prize was 1,500 miles. That was the distance. The distance to Tokyo, 1,500 miles. Close enough. Close enough for the new bomber. The Boeing B-29 Superfortress. A silver monster with a 10-ton payload and a range that made planners weep with joy. The Seabees arrived before the fighting even stopped. They worked around the clock. Bulldozers, graders, steamrollers. They moved more earth than was moved for the Panama Canal. They paved over history, over battlefields, over graves. They built the largest airfield in the world, Northfield, Westfield, 6 runways, each 2 miles long, a city of aluminum and gasoline and bombs. November 24th, 1944. Northfield, Tinian. The air hummed. A new sound. 111 B-29s lined the runways, their silver skins gleaming in the tropical sun. Inside the lead plane, dauntless Dottie, Brigadier General Emmett O'Donnell Jr. looked at his watch. The mission folder was stamped Top Secret. The target, Nakajima Aircraft Factory, Tokyo. The men who fought and died on the beaches, the islanders who guided them through the jungle, the women who smuggled messages. They had all paid for this moment. They had purchased this runway. They had paid for this flight. The engines roared to life, one by one. A crescendo of power that shook the island. The sound of retribution. The sound of fire to come. And then the main thing started. What is the true cost of a human life in the cold arithmetic of war? Is it measured in the statistics of casualties, in the reports of naval bombardments and landings on shattered coral beaches? Or is it found in the silent, unrecorded choices made in the heart of the storm? Choices that history rarely has the language to describe. The official narrative is one of strategy, of tank traps and sharpened bamboo stakes overcome by American might, of liberation. But the real story, the one that matters, remains somewhere else. It lives in the forgotten details. In the flicker of a glance between two women at a well, a silent pact sealed against a backdrop of terror. It is folded into a banana leaf, a humble piece of fish cradling a message of life or death. A fragile vessel of hope against an ocean of despair. It echoes in the fevered, delirious ramblings of a man named Tweed, a scarecrow of a pilot whose bones pushed against his skin. A ghost who was supposed to be dead, kept alive by a conspiracy of compassion. A conspiracy of farmers and priests, of mothers and daughters. A conspiracy against the inevitable. And then there is the silence. The silence of the archives on the true nature of this island-wide network. The silence of the survivors who learned that some stories are too heavy to tell, that the price of their heroism was often torture and death, unacknowledged by those they saved. The silence surrounding the Japanese 43rd Division. Its headquarters moved deep into the jungle of Tapatchau, a shadow of death looming just 2 miles north of the secret ranch. Every shared meal, every whispered word, every hidden footprint was not just a risk. It was a direct challenge to an occupying force that promised agony and delivered it with chilling efficiency. The beach defenses at Tumon and Talafofo were a visible threat. But the real danger was the ever-present neighbor, the watchful soldier, the possibility of betrayal for a single bag of rice. This is the part of the story no monument can capture. This is the truth that exists between the lines, between archival files, between the silence of the dead and the quiet of the living. They came as invaders. They came as liberators. But for the Chamorro, they were simply the shifting tides of a war they did not ask for. Their choice was not political. It was elemental. It was not a calculation of who would win. It was a calculation of what it meant to remain human. To see a man, an enemy to their occupiers, and see not a soldier but a soul. A son. A life worth saving. This was not a decision born of ideology. It was born of empathy. Not loyalty to a distant flag. Loyalty to a stranger in desperate need. This was not a grand strategy for freedom. It was a simple, terrifying act of shared humanity. An abundance of spirit in a world of material scarcity. An abundance of courage in a world of absolute fear. History, as it is written, loves clean lines and clear heroes. The American forces landing on the beaches. The Japanese forces defeated, but the story of Guam is not clean. Its lines are blurred by sacrifice and suffering. Its heroes are the ones who were punished for their bravery, their names lost between the lines of official commendations. The war for the island ended in 1944. The bombs fell silent. The landing craft rusted, but the questions remain. What is owed to a people who risked everything for strangers who would soon forget them? How is a debt repaid when it was never officially recorded? The sound of the waves on the reef is all that is left of the thunder of naval guns. But if you listen closely in the rustle of the palm leaves, in the stories still told in quiet kitchens, another sound persists. A whisper. The whisper of a truth still waiting to be fully acknowledged. The whisper of a war that has never truly ended.